Happy Sunday, everyone. Welcome back to another video. So I found this Rastafarian shop yesterday off of Main Street here in Jacksonville, Florida. And they sell these wonderful oils, you guys. I didn't buy this, by the way. I actually bought this dress that I'm wearing now, but he gave me this for free. It's called Pink Sugar, and I'm like, oh, I can just bathe in this. It smells so good. It smells so delicious. Alright, so I'm making this video today on Pan-Africanism versus interracial cuckolding. I actually was just going to do a video on cuckolding, and I actually was going to make it my very last video on cuckolding. Why? Because I'm over it, you guys. I have been inundated with a lot of cuckolding video requests, and I've answered most of them, right? But since I've been on vacation here in Florida, since I got here with August 21st, I have received a decent handful of emails from, I'm sure, mostly white men wanting me to talk about cuckolding. So I think I might make this my last video on cuckolding, but I thought I would do something a little different with this one. Now, it was somewhat inspired by one of my recent email requests that I received, where I'm going to read you guys the email. But he kind of put a spin on it, right, with the cuckolding. I'm just like, Pan-Africanism? Because you saw my recent video that I made on Dr. Umar Johnson, and I was talking about my mom's reaction to me introducing her to Dr. Umar Johnson, virtually, not in person. And somehow he got this fantasy in his mind, right? I'm going to read you guys the email. I'm just like, you are so pathetic. But it's funny, though. So I'm going to read the email that he sent. And that's kind of what inspired me to talk about both of these subjects combined, even though they really have nothing to do with each other, right? And I get it. White men have this illusion. They have this fantasy that they think is going to come true, but never come true. Perhaps maybe, I don't know, perhaps maybe with some black men who want to dibble and dabble and explore their sexuality and have fun, right? Because I've noticed that. I've noticed there are black men who somehow believe in this idea of the Black New World Order, which is basically predicated on, it's sex, it's based on sexual activities, right, with white men, you know, or white women giving black men a sense of dominance over white men, right, or white people in general, white men and white women. And I'm thinking, like, that is so fake. And I did make a video on that because someone wanted to get my perspective on the Black New World Order. They have an acronym for it called BNWO, and I'm like, what is that? And I looked it up. So it's superficial, but a lot of black men, I think, have dibbled and dabbled in that, and they play with the idea. But any true Pan-Africanist will not participate in that. I have to kind of give that disclaimer before I begin this video. Any true Pan-Africanist will not participate in those types of activities, right? Interracial cuckolding, like, you're not gaining any power. I mean, maybe like in the bedroom, sexual power, but that's not what Pan-Africanism is about. And so we're going to get into that because one of the email video requests I received from this white guy, he was trying to sell the idea as to how black people can galvanize power, gain power, by participating in these interracial cuckolding activities where they take sexual dominance, basically, over white men and white women. I'm just like, that's not what Pan-Africanism is about. I really think it's a slap in the face, and it's kind of like an insult if you really think about it. It's an insult to the movement of Pan-Africanism. But before we go into those emails, I actually also was inspired to talk about Pan-Africanism a little bit in this video from a live video that I saw recently, and some of you guys probably saw it as well. Dr. Umar, he went live this morning, right? He is in, I think, the Caribbean islands, in St. Croix. He was doing a lecture over there, and so now he's just like kicking back and relaxing on the beach, and I'm like, okay, great, right? Too bad I'm not there though, but great, he's having fun, right? But it was something that he said in his live video, right, that I want to comment on. I have to address. I wasn't going to address it, right, but I have to address it. And I'll address it in this video. I didn't want to make like a separate video with his name in the title. I've kind of stepped away from that. I used to do that, and I kind of stepped away from that for specific reasons. And so someone commented, right? Okay, someone commented in the live video, as they always do. There's always a couple people that comment in his live videos and ask, like, Dr. Umar, you know, why are you still single? Like, why haven't you got married yet? And I think that his response is very superficial. It's not an honest response. I don't think he's really delved deep into himself to really look at himself, right? To really see like why he's still a single man. He hasn't done that searching yet, right? He gives like this surface answer to say, well, he has these phrases that he's developed, he's come up with, right? He added a new phrase now. So he came up with these phrases. He says, consciousness over cookies, politics over poo nanny, and now the new one is revolutionary over romance, right? A revolution over romance. And I'm like, it sounds cute, it's funny, it's catchy, but when you break it down and you really think about it, I think that is a form of objectification. And it's so many layers to like analyze those three phrases that he uses, kind of like as an excuse for why he's single. Now I have to say this, and I said this before already, that Dr. Umar Johnson does not really want to be with a woman. Not to say you want to be with a man, right? I'm not going that extent, right? But I don't think that he wants a relationship, like a genuine, like serious, long-term, intimate. And now I say intimate, I'm not talking about sex, but I'm talking about like involved relationship with a woman. He doesn't, I don't think he wants that. And I'm going to say why. For him to use those specific terms, right? Although they're catchy, I get it. But he uses those terms, I think, for a reason, because for him, a woman, it really is nothing more than what she can provide in the bedroom, right? But then he uses as a cover-up. He'll say as a cover-up, oh, a lot of these women out here, black women, and I have to say this, like, I love and support Dr. Umar Johnson and his mission, so don't take this as like as an attack against him, but I have to be clear. Like, I'm about clarity and honesty, right? And so this is my comment in response to the video that he made live today when he was on the beach in St. Croix. And so it's like, yeah, he sees a woman, like those phrases are clear indications of how he views a woman. What is a woman's role to him, right? If he were to direct his attention towards a woman, what is a woman's worth, value to him? It's punani, right? Romance, as he says. Punani, that's what it is. The cookies, right? That's a woman's value. That's what she brings to the table. That's why you have a lot of these men that go to say, and these men are part of the manosphere or the MGTOW movement, men going their own way. Well, there will be like, oh, what does a woman bring to the table other than sex? Now you got to think about that, right? Because at first glance, any woman who is emotionally reactive, not thinking with a rational mind, will quickly have a knee-jerk reaction, get offended, and assume that the statement is made to make a woman feel insecure, right? So she may become insecure and then become defensive, right? But like, I'm too much of a thinker. I'm a very wise woman to fall into that trap. Because it's a trap, right? That statement, when a man makes that statement, oh, what does a woman bring to the table? That is a freaking setup. That's a trap. And if you bite the freaking cheese, like, you fall into the trap, like, don't do it, right? Don't even respond to that. That should be an indication for any woman that hears something like that coming from a man. Just step away and observe this man. Take a look at him. And to know that this man has no interest in women. he already has preconceived notions about women, right, that are not favorable to developing a healthy relationship with a woman. It's clear. Because it should go without saying what a woman brings to the table. To say, like, to ask a question what a woman brings to the table is almost like to step in a woman's shoes. I take it, because that's basically a woman's perspective, right? That's something that a woman would want to question a man to see if, you know, he's fit for that relationship. Like, to interview a prospective partner, right? Those are thoughts that she would have in her mind, because we know traditionally men have been the providers. So it makes sense that a woman would ask that for reproductive purposes, right? For her own survival, for her own protection, right? To protect her womb, so that she is not just giving her womb to any man that isn't going to be a provider to protect, right? To be able to take care of the family. But a woman would never ask it in that way, though. What do you bring to the table, right? There's other ways to get an idea to see if a man is viable, right? To see, you know, what kind of resources he has and if it's sufficient enough to be able to support a family. Given, you know, they have sex, they fall in love, have sex, and a baby comes about, right? So it makes sense that a woman would have that perspective. But for a man, right, for a man to frame that question in that way, right? So going back to those three phrases, it's very clear how he sees women, right? And yes, he is a conscious leader. He's saying and proposing that he has a plan to bring about systemic change, revolutionary change for the Black community, not just in America, but worldwide. But at the same time, it's his perspective on women, though, right? And then he goes on to explain with his excuse to say that, oh, well, there aren't any Black women who are serious about helping Black people, who are serious about, you know, the Black community and want to really give back to the Black community, right? He's looking for like a revolutionary equal. I get it. It makes sense. But when you think about it, he's basing his assumptions on the mere fact of what he sees, I guess, these potential women. And I thought that was interesting too, because he goes on to say, oh, when I look at their social media profiles, all you see is like pictures of them like taking selfies and stuff like that. I'm just like, okay, so you're looking for a potential mate on social media. You have your eye on some women. You following these women. I know he follows me. I've been knew that, right, when he reposted one of my videos. But I find that assumption to be interesting. For a person to make an assumption to say that a woman isn't doing anything, right, to bring about systemic change for the Black community, just based on what you see on her profile. Now, that's to assume that if you were to do something revolutionary for the Black community, you would post it on your profile. You have to post everything that you do for the community on your profile, and a lot of people don't. There are some things that you can't post. He even mentioned that. Him being a credentialed school psychologist, he even admitted that a lot of the work that he does for the Black community, specifically for Black children, you really will never really know about, because there are laws that protect the confidentiality of that information, right? Of the work that he's doing for these kids, for the families. So why wouldn't that apply for a Black woman who is also giving back to the community, right? Like, who goes to showcase and say, oh, look what I'm doing for the community, especially if it's true revolutionary work that is a threat to the status quo, is a threat to the system of white supremacy, to the dominant structure. That's not something that people would advertise. I even mentioned that in a conversation with a guy that I was talking to on a dating site. He's just like, oh, what are you doing? It's just like, you don't go and you don't that's not something you broadcast. That's not something you tell people that you don't know. Point blank, period, right? So I find that to be very interesting, that perspective, and I think that it would behoove Dr. Umar Johnson to do some soul searching within himself, to be honest about why he's single. He doesn't want a woman, and the only worth that a woman will bring is her punani. That's the only thing that he really wants from a woman. He's saying that he wants 2 queens to help him build the FDMG Academy, or to run it, right? Okay. You don't think that there are women who are just as passionate as you are for our own survival as black people within our own generation and generations to come? You don't think that there are black women who are committed to the struggle? Like, you're the only one. And that's another thing that I have, like, with what he says, because he makes these triggering statements, like, as if it's a competition, right? Like, as if, oh, who's doing the most for the black community? He's even posed that to say he's doing more than any other black man. It's just like, by what though? Like, you may be very popular, right? He is popular, but that's not a measuring stick of how much he's bringing about change. He lectures, granted, right? And there are a lot of people that go to his lectures, but even taking that into account, right? Let's just say, okay, well, you're using the amount of people who show up at lectures as a measuring stick, as a barometer for the impact that you have brought to the black community, based on the number of people who show up to the lectures. Even within that, if that is true, right, and we know that, let's say over the course of, I don't know how many years has he been active, let's say 10 years, he's probably directly touched in person, and we know through video, right, through the internet, he's touched a lot of people, but let's say in person, he's touched, thousands of people, right? If that many people have been touched, awoken by his words, right, at his lectures, where's the manifestation of that in their lives, right? Where's the manifestation of that in the black community, right? How is that really bringing about? Like, he talks about, okay, well, there isn't much change happening. There aren't black people building institutions. There aren't nobody doing this. Okay, why aren't there people doing that, though, if you've touched so many people, right? So those just my question. I had to implement that in this video, because one of the emails that I received from one of my viewers actually mentioned Dr. Umar Johnson in the email. It's weird. I'm going to read it to you guys. But I had to kind of lay that down, because that was on my chest, obviously, from watching the live video with Dr. Umar Johnson. And granted, like I said, I love and support Dr. Umar Johnson, but I have to say that. I have to make that comment. Cheers. I love drinking cranberry juice in the morning. All right, so let's get into these emails. And like I said, I don't know, this may be my last video on cuckolding for a while, because it just gets redundant. It gets old. It gets, I get sometimes annoyed. I get like bothered. Like, you guys are just saying the same thing, emailing me about the same exact thing over and over again. So like I said, I received a handful of emails from, I'm pretty sure, mostly white men who watch my videos. And granted, like, you guys know, I support alternative sexual lifestyle. So as a BDSM practitioner, I identify myself as a submissive, right? I think I make that very clear, but somehow people waste their time sending emails to me thinking that I am dominant and creating these fantasies of me participating in domineering sexual activities. It's just like, it ain't gonna happen. That ain't happening. Sorry. But I'm gonna read you guys the email. Now, this one person actually sent like several emails back to back, and I got a handful of other emails from different people. So I don't know how long this video is gonna be, and how in depth I'm going to address these email requests, but let's just go with it. So he says, Dear Danielle, after watching some of your Facebook videos about cuckolding, which I enjoy very much, I wanted to share what I have experienced. I am in my mid-40s now and found myself really turned on by femdom from early adulthood. Bondage, discipline, chastity, cuckolding, sissification, humiliation, TPE, and such. Now, I gotta see, what the hell is TPE? Yo, what the fuck is up with my internet, yo? It just went out. Hold on, let me connect. Now, let me see what the hell is TPE. Oh, okay, total power exchange. I've heard of that, but not recently. Okay, yeah, I know about total power exchange, and I kind of like that, but that kind of tampers along the lines of slave and master dynamic relationships. So I haven't went that far. The farthest I've gone is like daddy, dom, baby girl. And I also have to say, I've said this before, but somehow people get it misconstrued to assume that I get BDSM, like, it's sexual activities, right? But it's more than sexual activities. It's a lifestyle for a lot of us, right? And for a good portion of us, like, we don't engage in just casual sexual activities with random people. And somehow, I think people have misinterpreted my openness about these topics and willingness to talk about it freely here with you guys, you know, on video. They assume that, okay, I'm just like fucking out there just having sex and doing, like, no. For me, it's only within, like, I'm only interested in building a relationship, a long-term relationship, and that's where I will engage in these types of activities, right? So even like a person that I just met, right, and he learned that, you know, I'm interested in BDSM, he kind of wanted to create a conversation surrounding, oh, well, what type of activities are you interested in, and what kind of things that you wanted to try, you know, in your last relationship but you haven't tried. And I find it awkward when guys like are getting to know me, but they kind of lead with those kinds of questions related to BDSM. Granted, BDSM is very fascinating, I get it, right? But to lead with those types of questions in your attempt to really get to know me kind of shows like your underlining intentions, right? And yeah, some are very forthcoming, you know, to say that, you know what, I just want a sex partner, I want a play partner. Okay, but that's not what I want though, right? You know, granted, that's going to be a part of the relationship, but that's not my motivation for pursuing a relationship with any man, especially at this age, right? Nothing wrong with dibbling, dabbling, and having fun, but that's just not my cup of tea, right? I feel like submission is very sacred, and it's not something that a woman, especially myself, just gives away to any person, right? Like, no, you have to earn it, and you earn it through the time that you invest in building with me. And it's mutual. It's not like, oh, you're giving me all this time in exchange for me submitting. No, like, this is what we both want, right? So not everyone wants the same level of intimacy in a relationship, right? But I can tell a guy that is involved, like, he's seeking something deeper than just sex. Don't get me wrong, sex is great, but for many of us, there has to be a mental, emotional, spiritual connection that comes before sexual activity. All right, so this person goes on to say, what I have learned especially turns me on about cuckolding, and it's interesting, like, I wonder where is he from? Like, is he from Europe somewhere? Because the way he spelled learn is different than how we spell learn, right? So he spells it Learnt. Alright, but anyway. He says, what I have learned especially turns me on about cuckolding is the idea of being dominated, forced into loving and pleasing men while being held in chastity and disciplined whenever necessary, either by whipping or electric shock collars to my locked up clitty. Now, this is a man, but I think he's a trans woman, right? Or he's in the process of becoming a woman. But he was biologically born a male. And so he's talking about his fantasies, and because I have made videos on cuckolding and I'm very open to talking about it, right? Like, I mean, I speak about it very uninhibitedly, so I think that's what attracts a lot of different people to my videos. And I welcome you guys to share, you know, your experiences on this. I think what it is just that I don't want my channel to become like a cuckold channel. Like, that's only one aspect, right? And not just cuckolding, but like BDSM, alternative sexual lifestyles. That's one thing that I talk about, but I like to talk about other things too. And I welcome ideas to integrate these different topics with other topics of interest, like politics, which you guys have done already. I realized what I wanted to become was a girl, both sexy and slutty, because I want men. I am deeply attracted to physically strong men with huge cocks. That's how you know it's a white man, right? Because when a black man says cocks, yo, he says cock. We say dick. Who could both overpower me easily as I feel them pumping my pussy full of cum. He doesn't have a pussy, but I think he's trying to get a pussy. Full of cum and having their way with me, or rather his way with me. You see, I thought at first that I was just progressively being influenced by the porn I was watching. You were. But I think he tries to tie it back to childhood, because my theoretical and clinical orientation is psychodynamic, and so in my previous videos I have linked kind of like the etiology of cuckolding desires back to a person's developmental experiences in childhood. And so he goes and ties it back to his own, you know, experiences in childhood, which he talks about here. You see, I thought at first that I was just progressively being influenced by the porn I was watching, and these beautiful dominant women cuckolding, sissified, training through chastity and orgasm control. Like, some of those videos are very fascinating, and I admit, you know, that a lot of my proclivity towards the BDSM was inspired by BDSM porn. But I feel like porn has such a negative connotation. People think porn, they're like, oh, you're a freak, you watch porn. It's just like, no, unfortunately, there isn't another space to watch mature adult videos. It's just mature adult videos. It's just like watching an R-rated movie that has sex in it, right? That's what I'm attracted to, you know, like just mature videos. It's just sex. But unfortunately, there is only one space or place for that type of material, that type of content, you know, in our society, and it's just in porn. It's like the dark world of porn. It's not as mainstream as I would like for it to be, unfortunately. But yeah, that's where I got much of my inspiration in watching like bondage videos. And I saw myself in her position, like as a submissive woman. I'm just like, oh my gosh. Like, you just watch, like, I think we have, and I think science has, or biology has indicated this, that as human beings, we have like mirror neurons, right? Where we can kind of feel what another person is feeling, right? We can kind of visualize ourselves in their shoes, and we can look at a person experiencing a certain thing, whether it's pain or pleasure, and then we feel the same pain or pleasure within ourselves, right? It's just amazing. But then I thought about my childhood and how, as I discovered my sexuality with other boys older or around my age, which would have been about 9 or 10, so he was like very young, which a lot of adults, like, you know, are honest enough to admit that a lot of their fantasies that they want to see played out in adulthood kind of began, like, they got its root in childhood, right? And you wonder like, oh, where? But children have fantasies. Children masturbate. You know, children think about things. They explore their bodies and things like that, and all kind of ideas and thoughts cross, you know, children's mind as well. So he's talking about like the initial root for these fantasies that he had when he was younger. He is an adult though now. He says that I was the one usually getting fucked. Somehow I ended up having quite a few experiences of getting fucked, while with a few others we just watched each other masturbate. As I fantasize about being turned into a girl and trained by a dominant woman, forced to do so and coerced to please strong dominant men who usually happen to be black, because I love huge cocks especially. Who doesn't love a big black dick? Who doesn't, yeah. I realize I may have decided to hide my true sexual desires to integrate into society, to not feel I might be bullied or teased at school about it, and indeed I do vaguely remember such a time. So he's like going back, talking about like how those fantasies began when he was younger, pretty much pre-puberty, right? He was pubescent, in the pubescent period of his development, you know, which that's normal. So what he's saying is not anything like that's just out of the box, because that's where children begin to explore their sexuality, right? Around, you know, puberty. He says around age 9 or 10. You know, a lot of girls get their period when they're that age. Now, I was a late bloomer. I didn't get my period till 16. So I really wasn't thinking about sex necessarily with other men, although there were some sexual ideas that was popping up in my mind before the age of 16, for sure. A lot of parents don't know this though about their children. They're just like, what? You know, because of course, like, our society has demonized sex, number one, and then also has made a lot of things like illegal. So of course it's illegal for children to even have sex with each other at that age, right? But he's talking about fantasies that he has. So I don't think he acted upon those fantasies at that age, but he's saying, you know, these are thoughts, these are ideas that were already developing in his mind at 9 and 10 years old. And a lot of children are experiencing similar things. Their parents will never know, because their parents are like very strict, very religious, you know, very conservative. So their parents haven't really created a space for the child to come to them to express, you know, things that they have been exploring in their mind or around their body parts, you know. But children explore. Come on, you think they don't explore until they get 18 years old or 21 or legal consent? No, they explore way before then. But parents will never know that. And so he's just expressing that here in a very, you know, mature way here in this email. And he says that, you know, he chose to hide it because he didn't want to be bullied or made to feel shame about it. So he kept it to himself, right? He says also some boys called me gay at school who had no connection to any of the boys who had fucked me, so they could not, oh, well, he did actually have sex, okay. So they could not have heard of it, yet I seem to have obviously inspired people to feel I was effeminate. Oh my goodness. Okay. Then he goes on to say, now I know why I fantasize about being a teen, meeting a dominant woman who would keep me in chastity while coercing me to love and please men, transitioning me fully into a young girl, complete me, fulfill my deepest desire. So how does he make the link from having these fantasies? Let's go back. As I discovered my sexuality with other boys older or around my age, which would have been 9 or 10, that I was the one usually getting fucked, right? He was like the bottom. And then he also fantasized about being turned into a girl and being trained by a dominant woman. Okay. So those fantasies began. But then it's like, okay, well, what really inspired those fantasies, right? Like being dominated by a woman, being turned or being made sissy, right? Sissified or made effeminate by a dominant woman, even at that age. And then progressing into a teenager he says, being a dominant woman who would keep him in chastity while coercing him to love and please men, transitioning him fully into a young girl, complete him, fulfill his deepest desire without any feeling of guilt, and helping him conquer all his fears and doubts this way. To find my true self and be happy as a young girl. He's speaking this. Happily in love and enslaved to a beautiful, strong, dominant bull who also loved me. When I am really, really horny, I imagine us kissing as he fucks me so good, feeling the when I'm really, really horny, I imagine us kissing as he fucks me so good, feeling the fullness of his virile member pulsate with pleasure as he comes inside my pussy, which I can now also please him with after going through all the therapy and surgery to completely be a girl and in touch with my true self, happily and passionately in love. So he's speaking about like when he was a teen, when he was younger. He's in his 40s. He began to say that. So for a lot of you guys who are wondering, because I know, and I'm definitely not into no freaking child fucking, what do you call it, pornography or molested with any of that bullshit, right? But he began this email by saying that he is in his mid-40s. He is an adult, but he's taking us back to when he was younger and telling us about the fantasies that he had when he was younger. Alright, now what kind of creeped me out though, I was like, okay, why is he sending me so many freaking emails? And a lot of y'all are very impatient because y'all expect me to make a video the same day that you guys email me. And I'm just like, I have a life. I'm actually on vacation, but I do have plenty of time. And so I'll come around to the email, and if I feel motivated, I will make a video on it. But, you know, this same person, so this is a continuation. This is a different email that he sent, I believe, on a different day. Actually, the following day. It's like, are you kidding me? Yeah, so the first email that I just read, he sent on August 24th, and he follows up the following day on August 25th and sends another email, I think like 5 back to back. By the way, who's tuning in, feel free to join in. Feel free to share your thoughts on this if you feel moved. So he goes to say, okay, so this is the email he sent after watching the video that I made on my mother's reaction to Dr. Umar Johnson, because I am here in Florida visiting my family, and I felt moved to show my mom Dr. Umar Johnson, right? Like, I like to bring her into my world. Granted, it's been like 6 years since I visited my family. And so he says, beautiful African goddess Danielle. I'm just like, okay, here we go. Here we go with the bullshit. I think that people think they can like manipulate, right, or soften a person. Like that doesn't work with me, okay? But anyway, I'll read it. He says, so much of what you say deeply resonates within me and inspires many passionate fantasies. It's going to remain a fantasy. I have to say that before I even read this. But I'm going to read you guys what his fantasy is, which I think is kind of hilarious. Alright, he says, your last video about Dr. Umar made me imagine you, Dr. Umar, and I as your slave. He wrote that completely wrong. Basically, he's saying that he imagines me and Dr. Umar together and him as our white slave. Alright, so he says, white men like me enslaved. And he uses men in quotations because he's really transitioning to become a woman. I don't think he's made the full transition yet. I think he talks about like getting the surgery that he was alluding to back in the previous email. But he says, white men like me, enslaved and transition into girls to serve virile and superior black men. That may well be what my true calling is, deep down, my deepest desire. Yo, he said, it's like that's his true calling, his purpose. Like, to take it to that extent, yo, to say that that is why you are here on earth. I mean, if that's what gives you satisfaction, right? You found deep satisfaction by serving black men. All right, let's keep going. Once the white sissified male experiences a deep and all-powerful passion and desire with an alpha black male, well endowed and so disposed, who loves transitioning sissies completely into girls, the white man would love nothing more than to become as feminine as possible for the black dominant man. Now, I would like to say black men who are engaged in this type of lifestyle are they're obviously the minority, right? But there are so many black men who are on the down low. What's good, Massanissa? There are a lot of black men, I think, that have these hidden desires within them to engage in these type of activities of what, like, he's talking about. But they will never come out and say it because you have to be very bold. And so I think this same person, he sent me some links on Twitter. Because Twitter, apparently, you can post porn on Twitter. You can post porn. I follow this cult, this tribe or whatever, Carbonation, and the cult leader, or tribal leader, shall I say, because cult has negative connotation to it. But his name is Nature Boy, right? His birth name is Eligio, and he's from New York. But he started posting videos of him having sex with his wives because he practices polygamy. But he posts these videos on Twitter, and Twitter allows it. You can post porn on Twitter. I didn't know that. But you know that shit ain't gonna fly on Facebook or Instagram. But Twitter it does. What? I hate when they send me these pop-ups. Get off my screen. Okay. So, yeah, this same guy, he sent me a link, and I clicked on the link. It goes to Twitter, someone's Twitter account, and it's a black man. I guess he identifies as an alpha dominant male, but I don't know. It seems kind of contradictory for a black man to be engaging in sexual activities with a sissy, right? I mean, I get it. He's transitioned, so he's not really a man. That's why you put man in quotation marks. He's really a female, right? But he's still a man, though. So how is that? How can the black man consider himself alpha? Nature Boy, wow, yeah, he's wild. I mean, I think we all have that wild tendency, and that's probably what draws me to him, beyond him being connected to the earth and having a sense of consciousness. And I like that aspect, but the fact that he lives his life uninhibitedly and freely, I'm drawn to that as well, too. He's living his truth, and it's what better way to be in life? What better way to gain a sense of true happiness than to really live in your truth? People have fantasies, they have these things they imagine themselves doing, but they never do it, right? Because they don't want to face criticism, ridicule from society, or they have internalized these morals, so to speak, of what you should and shouldn't do, what's good and what's bad. So people just typically refrain from doing things that kind of go against the grain. Provoking such an overwhelming ecstasy at her new life as a slave to the African man and his wives. It's crazy how he goes from speaking in first person, second person, then he goes to speaking in third person. So y'all know I like to analyze. I'm big on analyzing people and obviously what people say, their words, right? And so for him to go from these different points of views, right, these different voices, he goes from third person, he goes from first person, second person to third person. It's I don't think he's quite comfortable in accepting this type of activity or even lifestyle, because he's speaking about it in third person, which means it's a degree of separation removed from this shameful or diabolical act, right? He's not comfortable in it. Why not just say I? Why not put himself? Why didn't he say, okay, provoking such an overwhelming ecstasy at my new life as a slave to the African man and his wives. Instead, he says, provoking such an overwhelming ecstasy at her new life, right? But he's talking about himself, just in like second and third person. Like, I just find that interesting. All right, then he says, eager to please her black owners, reborn as a girl in worship of her black owners. All right. My music goes against the grain. I'm trying to find a new way to put music out without Facebook, Instagram restrictions. Oh, don't you hate Facebook and Instagram, right? Because they do restrict so much. They shadow ban people if you say things that they don't agree with, right? You're going against the grain, like you're going to get shadow banned. Not too many people are going to see your videos, and it's hard to really get your content out to your audience, right? You get in space because they'll allow you to build up an audience, right? It's like I built up this audience being myself, right? And then they change the rules. Same thing has happened to me. They'll change the rules where now no one really, everyone that I've fucking built up this audience, right, for, they can't even see my freaking videos, right? It's weird. So to go around that, people have created like their own private subscription list, right, for their YouTube followers, their Instagram followers, and Facebook followers, so that they're still following them on those social networking sites, but you can maintain communication with them on a separate platform, right, through your own private subscription list, and let them know. You can notify them yourself when you go live or when you post a video, so that you're not completely relying upon Facebook to inform them, because Facebook is not going to do it. That's what the shadow ban is, right? They shadow ban certain types of content. So no surprise. So there's always loopholes to anything and everything. Now, this next statement he makes is funny. He says, sorry I did not give you my real name, as I wish to remain anonymous. Otherwise, you could blackmail me and have your way with me. First of all, he watches my video, so he knows I never disclose anyone's name who sends me these email video requests. I don't do it, because it's not, your name really isn't important to the video itself, right? But then he goes to say, otherwise you could blackmail me and have your way with me. No, that's like he's playing out this old fantasy in his own mind. It's interesting. But anyway, he continues, yo. This is like, I thought that I was long-winded. He has a lot to say. So he goes on to say, the idea of chastity, total power exchange, therapy. Now, I'm curious to hear about this therapy. Is it therapy role play? Because I've never heard like therapy as a fetish, like talked about as a fetish within the context of BDSM. He says, bondage, serving, and pleasing black dominant alpha males as our gods. Gods in capital, uppercase, G. Being coerced and taught to do so by the black goddesses, uppercase G. Being put in our position and finding completeness and ecstatic passion in serving as a trans slave girl fills me with such desire. And then he's like, to get his needs met, right? Because he has a desire to be dominated by a black dom, male dom, and a black female dom, right? That's his fantasy. But to feed into that, like he's playing on the notion of Pan-Africanism, right? Or the Black New World Order, so to speak. To try to convince, right? But it's not convincing. That can't convince me, because that is bogus. It's completely bogus. So think that this is a way that black people, black men and black women can somehow gain political, economic power. Maybe you can feel somewhat empowered, you know, just in your interpersonal interaction with that person, right? But that's just on a micro level, right? That's not real power necessarily, though, unless like your entire race is empowered, right? How can the entire race benefit from these individual interactions that you have with people, right? Who are drawn to this type of lifestyle. How does that benefit the mass group of African American people or African people across the diaspora? That's what Pan-Africanism is. That's why I think it's a joke. This idea is a joke, trying to integrate these two spheres of interracial cuckolding and Pan-Africanism. It's a joke because it's just like, come on. I mean, on a porn level or a BDSM level, you're just like doing play, okay, role playing. Yeah, that's for fun. You may feel powerful or empowered, but no, this is not bringing about real change. It's bogus. It reminds me though of, there's a black female dom in New York, I believe, because I saw like videos of her just parading around New York City with her white male subbies, right? And they were like, she has them like on all fours, and she has a leash around her neck, and I think in an interview she was saying how it makes her feel empowered. This is her way of kind of reversing white supremacy in her own mind. She feels empowered by having not just one, but I think she has like multiple white male slaves like at her beck and call. I don't know, it could work. I never tried it because for many different reasons, right? I mean, the first reason obviously is I have a preference for black men. Who doesn't? I mean, even white men like big black cocks, right? Even white men can attest, right? We all know, right? Like, just something special about that big black dick. Beyond just the dick though, but it's just the energy of a black man, right? The spirit, the soul of a black man that I'm attracted to. So that's the first reason. And I would say other reasons is, I don't know, maybe I would have a fear that it could backfire on me, right? Just allowing, a white man to get that close to me on that intimate level, even though I'm dominating him, right? Like I'm supposed to have more power over him, and he's very submissive and he gets off on that. Everyone knows like who truly practices BDSM, who truly has the power, right? It's really the submissive, because the moment that the submissive retracts that submission, right, that can fuck up the mind of a dom, of a person who is truly dominant, right? Who truly gets off on telling other people what to do, having complete control over another person. When that sense of control is threatened, it's a threat to their entire existence. It's a threat to the entire existence of a dominant person, right? To their survival, to their ego, to everything about them. When there's resistance presented by the submissive, that's where problems arise, right? And let's say as a dom female, hypothetically speaking, I'm dominating a white man, and I feel a sense of power, and then that power is changed, is taken away, or something happens within that dynamic. Something changes, right? And it's just like, but I thought you were in control. You know what I'm saying? You thought so. It offsets thing, right? It's just like, oh no, it'll be weird. And I think on a parallel sense of looking at white supremacy and white and black race relations, for so long white people have dominated black people. So any kind of inkling of a sense of a threat to that dynamic is going to raise red flags in the mind of the people who are in power, who are in control. It's just like, wait a minute. It doesn't feel right. It feels very scary to be in control. And I think even also likewise in the same vein, to be a submissive, right? Imagine being a submissive, and I have more experience, I would say, being a like in that role of submission and being led and guided by a dominant man, especially considering my last relationship was with the alpha black man, and it is threatening, right, for those roles to kind of be switched in a way, right, where me being a submissive and being with a dominant black man, thinking about my previous relationship, where let's say he kind of stepped off, right, of his role of being a dom or a leader or guiding me, being alpha. It's a threat to my role as a submissive. It's just like, okay, because, you know, each, I think, is dependent. You can look at, I guess, in a sense of codependency. I don't like how they term codependency, especially in the field of psychology and mental health, is viewed as a bad thing, especially in the context of like people who are codependent and use drugs, right? That hasn't been viewed as something that's healthy. But I think that, I don't know, maybe there's a different way to define the concept of codependency, but I just like to look at it as we're interdependent, and that can be a good thing. It can be healthy, right? But when there's a slight change on either side of that seesaw, right? Whether something changes within a dom or something changes within a submissive, it offsets the whole relationship, right? That whole seesaw is impacted by that, and both one or the other can feel threatened by that. So, because you're so interconnected, right? You're so tied in. That's the idea where, when we're talking about Pan-Africanism and black people uniting and gaining power, that changes the dynamic, the power structure that's already been established by white people in our society. Many generations ago, it's already been established, and so for black people to want to bring about systemic change within this system, any change, no matter, I don't even think how major or small, you like the power structure can feel it. You notice a change, and it changes their life because we're so interconnected, right? When we think that, oh, they don't rely on us, like, they've already established America, so black people can just go back to Africa and nothing will change. Oh, a lot will change because they're so dependent upon us for their survival. Believe it or not, I have to clarify that. So, he says, I wish I could find such a couple or polyamory to serve who would find great pleasure having me live as with them as their maid or however they please in transitioning me. Please have your way with me, African gods and goddesses, and confirm my position as your slave girl who loves to please you and make me complete. So this is the same person speaking, the 40-year-old white male. That's his fantasy, but he's writing me as if like I'm interested in. I would never be. That's not anything I'm interested in. I don't knock people's desires because we all have our own. I have mine too, but that's just, it doesn't complement what I'm interested in. Like, I've already stated that I identify as a submissive. Like, I don't think men get that. They don't get it. Maybe I present as a dominant woman, especially considering my profession as a psychologist, but no. I have no interest in dominating a black man or a white man, especially. Like, no. But he feels comfortable to share it with me and to go anonymous with it so that I can talk about it, and that's good. I mean, express yourself. I commend him for wanting to live his truth, right? Being honest enough to admit. So that's what I'm about, right? I'm about self-acceptance and self-discovery and learning who you are, and it doesn't just begin as an adult, right? Learning who you are, but going back to your childhood and reflecting on your own fantasies, you know, whether it was sexual or not, that you had as a child, you know, it ties into it. It's just about self-reflection and really looking into yourself to see who you are. So I commend him for being able to do that and being able to express that, especially relating to topics that are very sensitive or very stigmatizing. So I commend him on that aspect of being able to do that, because a lot of people, a lot of people have all sorts of fantasies, right, that can be deemed can be deemed like, you know, shameful and detestable, right? And they will never come forward and say it. You know, they just keep it to themselves. They will never say that they have these fantasies. Black men, black women, everyone has fantasies. Peter says, I'm supporting interracial cuckolding. Alright, so then he goes on to say, you're emasculated and feminized, passionately devoted little slut to be. Oh no! But that's his fantasy. No. I exist to worship, serve, and please you. Something you have my full consent for if you would like to share such an experience. And then he wasn't done. He sends another email, follows up and says, P.S. The thought of a black man and woman taking great pleasure in transitioning white boys into girls, lovingly making them discover their ideal self, completely breaking them and turning them into such good sex slaves for black men. Their gender surgically confirmed, and it being so well done, there is no sign of masculinity left whatsoever. What is it about wanting to be emasculated? You know, it makes me think. I almost forgot I had my cranberry juice here. But it makes me think, right, that hearing white men come forth and you know, divulge their sexual fantasies of wanting to be emasculated or sissified by black men, it kind of makes me think in terms of a parallel of what's happening in our society. And there is many agendas at play, right? But particularly there's an agenda where, yes, there is an agenda to emasculate the black man. And so it just makes me wonder, it's just like, this is kind of like their MO. They're a group of men, white men, who are okay with being emasculated, and they have no problem emasculating black men because, you know, that's what they're into. And so, but before conscious black men and women, right, for Pan-Africanism, that's considered a problem. So that's why I entitled this video Pan-Africanism versus Interracial Cuckolding, because many of the things that are discussed or talked about in this context of interracial cuckolding kind of go against, right? They go against, you know, Pan-Africanism. It goes against the movement. It goes against the theoretical concept of Pan-Africanism, let alone the actuality of it. So it's like, where does this fit, right, with Pan-Africanism? But I like to discuss them juxtaposed side by side to each other because you can see how they impact each other in different ways. And to see white men coming forth and wanting, have a desire, this deep, sensual desire, it's almost like a soul. Like he even said, this is his calling. Like, that's how you know it's major. It's like it's beyond him, right? He's speaking of this desire, that's something that's beyond him. When the person says they're called to do something, that means that they have a divine order that was already in existence before they were birthed into this world and came through their mother's birth canal or surgically removed from her stomach. So that's pretty significant. And to see like this parallel process happening in our society where, yeah, a lot of black men are being emasculated, and there's like a culture kind of emasculation to reinforce it, to make it okay, to say, you know, it's okay if you want to transition from, you know, the sex in which you were born to a different gender, opposite of what the sex that you were given at birth or assigned at birth. Okay, so this is his PS after his email that he sent. He says, their gender surgically confirmed, and it being so well done, there is no sign of masculinity left whatsoever. So very slutty and eager. It's such a massive turn on. I want to feel a black alpha male inside of me. I want to please him so very much, so he becomes more and more turned on and pleased seeing what he does to me. Kiss him passionately and be so hot and girly for him. Having African goddesses also training me to please him, helping me become the most feminine and pleasing possible for black alpha males. He's so serious, y'all. He leaves a link. I'm not going to talk about the link. I'm not going to like click on the link now. Hold on. I am trying to see. Okay, 58% battery, so we're good. How long have we been going for? 1 hour. Oh, this is going to probably be a 2-hour video. We'll see. So he provides a link, and I believe it's to the person's, I'm not going to show the link, right, or the person's profile. But I think when I did click on it before, it was like, yeah, it's to like it's to a black man's Twitter page who I believe is a dominant man, supposedly, or identifies himself as such. And his status says, I love when white boys beg to be broken, dominated, blacked, and feminized. Alright. So, as if that wasn't enough, he kept going and he sent another email and says, thank you so much, God, as you make me feel so good. He's like making, I didn't reply to that, but he's making these things up in his mind as if like I'm interacting with him. This is my first time even responding to his email, but he sends a follow-up saying he's thanking me. Like, thanking me for what? Since another one says, oh my gosh, look at this goddess. I would love to be her. Would you also, or would you like to make a white sissy be like her? I didn't click on that link because I'm just like, listen, no. Alright. Then he sends another email, yo. He sends another email. Says, your African goddess, Pan-Africanism could happen and become the global ruling elite. I'm like, oh my gosh, under what condition? If black men and black women were to make white men their sissies? Come on, yo. Seriously. This is so, it's like, this email is very selfish, I have to say that. It's very self-serving. It doesn't have any basis in, I think, reality. It's his fantasy. He admitted, like, this is his fantasy, though. Alright, all that is required is to demonstrate that they are morally superior. Like, wait a minute, I kind of took offense to that. Morally superior. To demonstrate moral superiority. So, you're kind of implying that we haven't demonstrated moral superiority. We're not morally superior. That's what he's implying. He's saying that Pan-Africanism could happen and become the global ruling elite under the condition that we prove that we are morally superior. Superior in good and truth. Then it will become the leading philosophy that they should rule the earth. A loving dictatorship superior to the status quo in every way, demonstrating that white males should be emasculated. See, this is where it goes into his self-serving sexual fantasy of white males should, he says that Pan-Africanism, right, should demonstrate that white males should be emasculated and transition into girls before they can reproduce. Or simply convince white men they are useless in pleasing black women. and for them to choose to become whatever would please their leaders and essentially owners. White women could then be either bred by black men or also be neutered so as not to become pregnant, while also pleasing, worshiping, and serving the black man and woman. So he's talking about genocide, or like extension of how to extinguish a race by saying that white women could be bred by black men or become neutered so they can't reproduce. This is a white man speaking, y'all. While at the same time also pleasing, worshiping, and serving the black man and woman. As far as religion is concerned, all have been corrupted, even Islam. Well, you don't have to tell me that. I know that. Although Islam has retained more than most in many ways, and the scripture remains in the most part intact relative to the other monotheistic religions, all that leaves a vacuum for change and return to good and truth. There is required maybe an African prophet to unite all the religions in a new faith that unites the good and truth left in all scriptures and refers to African folklore or paganism, and connecting our religions in some essential way, even if it is only to unite. Okay, he sounds like this person that was on my Facebook video the other day, and he was talking about uniting. And I think that was on the video that I made on treating OCD. So this talk sounds similar to that. I think it's the same person actually, who was suggesting that there can be kind of like this one universal religion that unites all people. And just like, it sounds good in theory, but in practice, you know goddamn well, there are going to be people who resist the idea, and people who just stick to what's familiar to them. He says, this religion will set moral standards, social standards, etc., the superior black African man and his woman, for example, and then the whites, etc., who must worship and serve their moral and rightful superiors so they may concentrate on fulfilling their lives, and their white servants will find reward and salvation in pleasing and working for them. I guess he would know as a white man, because that's basically how they created Christianity. This is just my belief, right? That they, created this religion, Christianity, or perverted, let's say, Christianity, because, maybe Christianity was indeed a true religion, that was based from experiences that actually happened, inspired by their experiences with this this higher being, right, or through the higher being, and then it was perverted by white people who made it basically to serve their agenda of white supremacy. That's hence how you see like the whitewashing of Christianity, so to speak, where these figures are they have light skin, they're fair-skinned figures that you see in Christianity, but it's to serve their agenda. So he's saying that the opposite could happen, the reverse could happen, where basically black people pretty much create a religion and do the same thing. And I think that it's already, there are a lot of belief systems that are practiced amongst certain groups of black people. So this already exists. I don't think I'm going to name those groups, but they already exist. But as far as on a global scale, not necessarily. But they are known globally though. But it's not like as popular or prevalent as Christianity or Islam. No need to fake it, just referring to the truth and good to demonstrate it. Then there will be a black new world order that all will be calling for, since is far better than the status quo in every way. I guess. I mean, I see why a lot of black men probably have bought into this idea of the black new world order, and I mean, don't try to use, I feel like people be trying to use like the idea of galvanizing political power through having sexual relations. I don't know. You'd be amazed how people gain power, right? Over other people. Sex, religion, they use anything they feel that is effective to gain power over another group of people. Or even over a person, right? So, I guess it's possible. But, nah. I'm not really buying it. And so there is more. Y'all thought he was done. He's not done. He sends another email saying, the black alpha male with the characteristics you described thinks outside the box, is courageous, stands his ground, strong, superior, black, free, dominant, good, is a superior black man among black men and the ideal black woman, most able in breaking sissy white boys. You see, it always comes back to his self-serving sexual fantasy, right? How he opens with this glorified idea of the black man, black woman, and then it comes back around to his fantasy of being broken as a sissy white boy, imbuing them with the feminine desire to please and serve, or whatever the ideal black female characteristics are. It is very simple. To return to black African mythology. I don't like that he uses the word mythology, because myth is a myth, right? It's not real. And much of what we know to be true as it relates to Egyptology, you know, has been viewed as a mythology, right? Kind of categorized as something that it's just folklore, but it's not. How everything originates from there, that future religions all hold some truth and some misinterpretations and such. Then by making their religions fit the universal natural philosophy, science, moral code, then this becomes a popular and leading faith and redefines the whole society, civilization, world without any force. Just be the power of reason, just with better ideas. You're a devoted servant. Now how he says like to make the white women sterile or not being able to reproduce, how would that happen? How would that happen? I mean, I guess it's not that difficult, especially with medicine. They're already doing that, I think, not just with white women, but with everybody, right? There's things, the toxins that are in food, and we're gonna talk about the freaking vaccinations and all that. All right. So I think that is the end of all of his emails. That's his idea that he wanted to put out there in the universe. So going alongside what we already talked about, I got some more emails from other people. This is a different person now. Says, hi, a question regarding cuckolding. Do you think the rising popularity of interracial porn, cuckolding, and sissies has to do with porn saturation? You answer your own question. He says, do you think the rising popularity of interracial porn, cuckolding, and sissies has to do with porn saturation? I know I had the odd ball-busting fetish since before puberty. Now this is another person talking about his fetishes, his fantasies when he was, you know, before he reached puberty, right? Pubescent. But once I started to watch porn, it evolved. First, it was just getting hit in the nuts. Now I fantasize about them being crushed or cut off by a black woman these days. Further evolution, I suspect. Yo, it's funny. I think it's funny how they try to tie, like, right, their sexual desires into this idea of black power and white extinction. We gotta take a deep breath on this show. We gotta take a deep breath. Because it's like, okay, on one hand, right, it could be likely to effeminize, right, white men. That way they no longer can reproduce, right? It kind of makes sense. I see where they get the term like the Black New World Order, right? But then, yo, how many people is gonna do this? Like, who the fuck, right? And then you think about it, a white man becoming a sissy, right, to a dominant black man, that would make the black man gay. I mean, I'm not talking about gay people. I'm just saying, though. It's just like, if a black man, I don't see how a black man that is engaged in this type of activity would be heterosexual or even bisexual, for that matter, have an interest in women, right? So, in the same vein, you're saying that these black men could effeminize white men so that they are no longer reproducing. But then if these black men are with you guys, then they are no longer reproducing with the black woman, right? Because their interest is more inclined to engage in these types of relationships. If that's their thing, that's their thing. But how does that, he's tying it back to Pan-Africanism and black power. How does that feed into black power? That doesn't. It's contradictory to that. So if you made it this far in the video and you're watching, please answer my question. Please address that below in the comment section, or you can just follow up with another email. But how does that serve to feed into the idea of procreation between the black man and the black woman if the black man's attention is directed towards sissifying white men? Right? Because I would think that a black man who's into that type of stuff would devote most of his energy, like that's his preference, so to speak, right? Not the black woman necessarily. Like, even the link that this guy sent me to this black master, you know, who effeminizes these white men on Twitter, I don't think he's interested. I mean, I doubt that man is doing anything with black women. He's not procreating. He's not building families. So that's contradictory to Pan-Africanism, right? So let's continue. But it's just funny because he's like, so this person here is so serious, but it's kind of like in line with the idea of what the other email said. He says, now I fantasize about them being crushed or cut off by a black woman these days. Further evolution, I suspect. I think the same is happening with cuckolding. At first, it was just interracial, but over time, I got into cuckolding, and now as a straight white man. So he's saying he's straight. He's saying that, but why do you mention sissies though? If you're straight, but whatever. And now as a straight white man, when I masturbate, I imagine sucking a black dick. You see how they saw that shit in there? So he's saying he's a straight white man, but you're fantasizing, which could be true. Not to say, because I know there's sexual fluidity. I know all about that, right? So yeah, it's the likelihood that, you know, you identify yourself as a heterosexual straight white man, but you have a desire to pleasure another man, because there's layers to homosexuality, right? He goes on to say, how much is this natural, inherent in my genes, and how much is it from warping my mind of constant porn watching? Now, I get where he's coming from, because for him to even prelude this statement, this question, by saying, setting the foundation for evolution, right? Evolution is something that kind of it's a natural biological process that happens. It's kind of like an interaction between biology and the environment, right? Like how our biological behavior kind of responds to what's happening in the environment. That's pretty much evolution, like in a small nutshell, right? And so he's conceptualizing his tendency, his desire to want to serve a black man in terms of evolutionary process that's happening, which is beyond him, right? Evolution is something that is greater, a thing that happens beyond us on an individual and interpersonal level. And then he says, or is it from warping my mind of constant porn watching? It's probably the latter, warping your mind from constant porn watching. I mean, but then it's like, what draws you to that? So on a deeper philosophical level, because we can go deep with this, it's like, okay, yes, we all have been exposed to porn at some point in our lives, right? But what attracts you? What is innate within you? Because it's something inside of you that draws you to a specific type of porn, right? That's why there's so many different categories and types of porn. Not all of us watch the same kind. I have an inclination to bondage, right? Not so much interracial porn, but I mean, granted, a lot of bondage porn is interracial when I think about it. I didn't look at it that way because it's usually a white male master, you know, over a black female submissive. What's drawing me to watch that? Not only watch it, but to get immersed in it, right? Because you can click on a video and it not be your cup of tea, right? You may watch a few minutes of it and you're like, exit out. It's not just, it doesn't do anything for you. It doesn't resonate within you. But then you know something is going on when you click on a video and you're watching it and you watch it in its entirety. And not only do you watch it in its entirety, but you find yourself going down a rabbit hole wanting to see other ones like it, right? Because it's doing something for you internally. It's triggering probably the release of certain neurochemical hormones that make you feel good on the inside. Because you're imagining yourself in the shoes of the person in the video and you're getting turned on. Psychologically, physiologically, right? But what makes me connected to watching a black woman in bondage by a white man? What could make me turn on by that? Perhaps epigenetically, right? Being a descendant of slave, it's just in my genes. And watching that visual, it activates DNA that has been passed down through the generations. Because even though, yes, the treatment, they say, was harsh and it was this and it's that, it's still something that we resonate with, right? It's the same thing with people who, when children have experienced something, right, in their childhood, it can be traumatic. Oftentimes that they're drawn to that same type of dynamic as an adult. You wonder, like, why am I attracted to aggressive, domineering women or men, right? It's because that's what you experience as love, so to speak, in your childhood, and that's what's been encoded in your memory bank. And memory is not just in the mind. We think of the mind as this, but really the mind is your DNA. That's your mind. Your mind is like your DNA. Your DNA is like throughout your entire body, from your head all the way down, through your toes, your fingernails, you know. Your memory is throughout your entire body, and it becomes activated, reactivated when you have these experiences, when you're exposed to these stimulating videos. You get reactivated. So that's that email. Feel free to contribute to this discussion. Another email, a separate person says, I had questions regarding cuckolding and I know I have seen some of your posts on it. I hope you could help. My current partner and I have been together for almost 4 years now. We have been looking to spice up the bedroom. I am not very well endowed, and she has recently been very curious about black men. Over the past few weeks, I have caught her looking up videos online and talking to her best friends about black men. Her best friends being black females. He says BF. I'm assuming that's black females. About black men. Sounds like he could be white and his partner, a black female. Her best friend has a very well-endowed black friend that she wanted to bring into the bedroom. This was new for both of us, but she seemed very interested and curious. While this was going on, she wanted to compare me to him. He was around 10.5. Yo, seriously? Y'all remember I did the video on, I think, why does size matter so much? It was a recent video I did. And I've had a freaking measuring tape, yo. And I'm looking at 4 inches, 4.5 inches on the measuring tape. I'm just like, yo, it's not as small as one may think, right? But 10 inches, yo. Alright, whatever. This made me very insecure about myself. I watched him pleasure my girlfriend in front of me for approximately 45 minutes straight. I've never felt so inadequate as that made me feel. Now, I see, I get it. I think these are just fantasies. These are stories made up, right? Not to say that it couldn't happen. Of course, anything is possible in our world we live in, right? Not to say it doesn't happen, right? But it's just like, the sense I'm getting is that these are just fantasies that these men are making up. Because it's a fetish. It's a fetish to be humiliated, for black women to humiliate white men based on their penis size. Anything can be a fetish, right? You'll be surprised how people get off on things that you wouldn't even think would turn them on, right? And me talking about it is probably making him stimulated, getting him off. People be jacking off to the strangest things, right? And I think that's also the reason why I say, you know what, this is going to be my last video, because I don't want to be the source of people's sexual pleasure, right? I just don't. What the fuck? For them to be jacking off, like, nah. Like, I'm a source of, like, intellectual porn, so to speak. But whatever. People are going to do what they want to do anyway, right? No matter. They will find some kind of way to gain pleasure. So, yeah, I get it. You know, men who identify, like, as submissive and want to be dominated, you know, and like to be humiliated and into the BDSM. I get it, because I'm into BDSM too, right? But it's like a source of pleasure for them to be humiliated based on the size of their penis. You know? Go figure. Alright, so he says, I'm talking about, I know you could never do what he did to her, and that bothers me. Honestly, I don't know how you feel about this, and I'm concerned she may leave me to pursue someone more like him. I guess I'm just looking for your feedback on this, and is what I'm thinking normal. I've already addressed this in a previous video, though. This sounds like very much like a story that was sent to me by someone else, who said that he feared his partner leaving him. Granted, he gave, like, it was consensual, yo. He consented to be a cuckold in that relationship, right? But then you fear that your partner's going to leave you. I mean, that's a form of betrayal. Even when you think about, like, open marriages, right, where it's consensual between both partners in that marriage or in a relationship, they agree to be, you know, engaged in extramaritalness. Not really extramarital, but it's like outside of the marriage, but it's really a part of the marriage, because everyone knows about who's sleeping with who, right? And it's not the partner that you're married to, someone else. Is it really considered extramarital? Because everyone is consenting to this. So it's really part of the marriage. Whoever you have sex with outside of the marriage is kind of part of your marriage in a way. It affects your marriage, and it does change the dynamic. For some people say, oh, it doesn't change, but it does change. Don't act like we aren't very dynamic creatures, right? And we bring many different characteristics to a relationship, it's going to change. That's where the whole idea of triangulation comes into play, right? Where you have a couple, two people, they're together, and oftentimes problems become worsened in a couple relationship, right? Everyone has problems in the relationship, right? There's no relationship that doesn't have freaking conflict. I find it very odd that even men, I had a man recently say, oh, I just want a woman to be my peace, and he's a correctional officer in New York, right? And I thought that was like odd for him to even say that, because I'm like, first of all, I can't bring you peace. You should already be at peace, because I'm at peace in my life, independently of anyone, right? Want a woman to be his peace. That's funny. But going back to what I was saying, is just that every relationship has conflict, right? Because we're just different people. Being different people, having different perspectives, different backgrounds, experiences, whatever have you, is going to create that tension, right? And it's just a matter of how you go about resolving the conflict. Oftentimes when conflict arises in a couple relationship, one or both people in that relationship will go out and receive comfort, support, encouragement from a person outside. And when I say comfort, support, is more like emotional kind of support, just talking to another person, like a girlfriend. A girl in that relationship may go talk to her girlfriend, or a guy in a relationship may talk to his guy friend, or may he talk to his mother. That can be problematic too, like the in-laws, right? Involving other people in your relationship is called triangulation. And that's on a platonic level. It's like just talking, right? Exchanging words. It's not even having sex. But people do that, and that in of itself can worsen any conflict or any issues that may be is already pre-existing in that relationship, right? And that's just through like conversing with family or friends outside of that. It's called triangulation. That's problematic. And in therapy, I have to add my 2 cents from my therapist hat, is that it's problematic because for therapists, we will recommend that conflict to be resolved between those two people, right? To not triangulate, to bring in a third person, right? Not to say that, okay, you can't have friends or you can't have family that you talk to, but that you are in a relationship with that person. So whatever issues you have with that person needs to be resolved between you and that person, right? And if there is going to be another person that is going to add their perspective, because their perspective will inherently influence that dynamic in that relationship. If there is, then that person should be neutral, non-biased, and that's the role of a therapist, right? And so going beyond that, when you're talking about a cuckold relationship or an open marriage or swinging in a marriage, sharing partners, you know that's going to change the dynamic, right? If a conversation, a mere conversation of one of the partners in the relationship stepping out, just having a conversation with someone else, will change the dynamic or a bond that you share between you and another person. You know that can change, right? You don't think sexual intimacy will change that dynamic? Yes, it's going to change. So you should already know that. You should already know that that's a possibility. And you agreeing, you consenting to your partner having sex with other people, you run the risk of, yes, seeing a different person come back to your house, to your bed. That person is going to be different. Come on now. That's why you think you have people who are controlling, so to speak, right? men, women who gauge to see, oh, who you talking to? Or, you know, damn, why ain't you make it home yet? 5 minutes late. Like, they're always kind of micromanaging the other partner, wondering like where they are, looking over who you're talking to, who's that. Because they know, like, any wise person knows any interaction, yes, you have with somebody is going to change that dynamic, right? So it's not so much, oh, like they're being selfish, so to speak. It's just, I think, I mean, they could be selfish in being concerned or feeling insecure of their partner's actions outside of their interaction, right? For their own protection, though, because innately we know that any interaction a person has is going to influence that dynamic. Yes, it's going to do it. Inevitably, it will do it. It's going to change. So that's why people are controlling. They're like, okay, you can't talk to anybody else. And if you do, I need to know this person, right? Yeah. Because whatever you've nurtured between you and that other person is going to change. It runs the risk of being ruptured. That bond, whatever that you created with that person. Moving on along, right? All right, I think this is the last email I received. So this is a different person, by the way, says, hi, I just wanted to give you some humble and modest feedback. I have recently discovered your YouTube channel and am enjoying watching one of your videos after work each day. It helps me to unwind. He says underwind, but he means unwind after a day in court defending people, but also opens my mind. Defending people? So you're saying you're an attorney? Alright, he says, many of your videos resonate with me. Please keep up the good work. You really glow. Thanks. And he leaves his name. And then I say, thank you for your support. Feel free to share your thoughts on which videos resonate with you. Because I'm curious. Like, people sometimes message me and they're very general about, you know, their reactions or response to my videos. And I'll be wanting to know, like, which video prompted you to message me? Like, give me feedback, more specific feedback, so that I know what I'm doing good and I can continue doing it. So I, reply to him and I say, share your thoughts on which videos resonate with you. I'm always looking for video topic suggestions, which I am. So feel free, you guys, to email me. So don't hesitate to send your topic request via email. Then he sends a reply and he says, hi Danielle, thanks for your swift response. The cocoa topic is something I can relate to. I'm a 39-year-old white guy. And then he puts in parentheses, not another one, I hear you say. Yeah, I get so many cuckold emails, but whatever. I don't mind addressing it as long as it's interesting and it's a little bit different than what I've already talked about. He says, and he lives with his girlfriend who is Asian from Hong Kong. We live in England, UK. I have quite an intense job and have to often assume control and make decisions. I have learned that okay, so apparently the way he spells learned is the same way the other person spelled learnt, Learnt, so I'm thinking that's a UK thing. He says, I have learned that I find myself desiring a more submissive sexual lifestyle and have developed a very strong cuckold desire. I agree with one of your videos where you said essentially, cuckold men are bi/gay, and in my personal scenario, it is true. But confused by the fact I am not really attracted to men in terms of fancying them and have no desire to kiss them. You don't have to. You can have a desire for the male energy, to be penetrated by the male energy, to just submit, to be the bottom in that relationship. A lot of people don't gay, bisexual has such a negative connotation. You see people, and I get it. I don't like being labeled anything either. Don't put me in a box unless I give myself that label, right? Unless I want to own that label. don't call me anything other than my name. Just call me Danielle, right? Because sometimes labels, like, he's like, wait, what are you calling me? And what is attached to that label? You know, which goes to show that people are self-respecting when they choose to not identify as bi. It's not that they aren't being honest or living their truth. In a way it is, but I think it's more so related to the idea that they don't want to attach themselves to something that has a negative connotation, which denotes that they are self-respecting. They have respect for and dignity for their reputation, their image, and who they are. And, you know, homosexuality, bi, gay, you know, it's just, unfortunately, you know, it is what it is. All right, he goes on to say, he says, I am not really attracted to men in terms of fancying them and have no desire to kiss them and be with them in a one-on-one scenario. I more desire being topped. What your videos have taught me is that despite my needs, my partner will have her own interpretation of my fantasies. Oh, yes. Yes, because you can see things through a certain lens, right? It can be completely innocent, but that doesn't mean another person is going to agree and see it the way you see it, right? Unless she's not in agreement with what you are desiring. Like, your desire is, she's not equally interested in your desire as much as you are, right? Equally invested, equally motivated to engage in that same desire, that same activity of cuckolding, right? And you're trying to convince her, like, listen, I want you to do this. Yeah, she's gonna look at you like, how is that benefiting her, right? People, you know, they say it's selfish, like self-serving creatures, but it's just like, no. I mean, it makes sense. You know, it's benefiting you, but how is it benefiting her? What is she gaining from it? In fact, it just may make her feel less valued as a woman. Like, if you need to gain pleasure, sexual gratification outside of your relationship, she may feel like her purpose in that relationship has become obsolete. Like, okay, why am I even here? Why am I here, you know? So that's just a thought that may pop up in her mind that will need to be addressed. If this is something you want, I've said this before in previous videos, I'm all for stepping out, exploring your sexuality, living your truth. But it's good, I think it's important to take into consideration your partner, a person you claim to care about, you claim to love, right? Because when it starts to become problematic, when people just out there doing them, right? Oh, I'm gonna do me. I don't care if you like it or you gain satisfaction from it. I'm just gonna do what I want to do, whatever. That's dismissive, it's disrespectful, and we're talking about morality. All right. So he says, what your videos have taught me is that despite my needs, my partner will have her own interpretation of my fantasies. True. Which I have previously told her about. Owing to your videos, I am much more mindful and considerate of her needs and desires. What a strange old world we live in. Thank you for your time. I look forward to more of your brilliant videos. You have a brilliant presence. I appreciate that. But yeah, I think, and that was just the last email that I received. But, well, actually, that was received, like, it was one of the first emails I received, actually, but I read his email last. It was kind of short and sweet, and he didn't really want anything. He was just, like, paying homage to my videos. So, I appreciate you guys for giving me feedback. There's always a lot to say, so that's what I had to say here in this video. I am about to go grab me some food. My dad's birthday is today, and somehow he went incognito on me. I mean, I already saw my dad, so since I've been here, I'm on vacation, I've seen him, I spent time with him. I would like to spend some more time with him on his birthday. I mean, owing it to him, really. It's really for him. So he better pick up his phone. Willing the universe. But on that note, I'm going to catch you guys in the next one. Feel free to leave your comments below. Share this video. It's long enough, so I'm going to just cut it short here. It's long enough. Feel free to send an email if you have additional questions or a topic that you would like for me to address, and I'll catch you guys in the next one. Have a great one.